The little Miata is taking over the world by force. Konnichiwa, Chanilo ni yokoso. I'm just practicing my Japanese for a very special JDM part we're going to be installing later. But first, I wanted to show you something that has been a pain in my backside for quite a while with this Miata. If you've been a long-time viewer of the channel, then you know that a while back I did wreck the car where I basically just bent the rear subframe and had to swap it out with another one. So over here in the graveyard where my Miata parts come to die, this is my original subframe that got bent in the accident. And this is the top part up here, this is the bottom under the car. And on most NA Miatas, there is a brace, a rear subframe brace that helps with rigidity for the car, and it bolts right here to these bolts. And there's several, and it basically attaches the subframe to the chassis of the car itself. So when I got the new subframe, I bought it used, and as it's, because it's used, it's been sitting out a while, there was some rust built up inside that I wasn't really aware of, I guess, when I installed it. So I went to put the rear subframe brace back on, and I couldn't get a few of these to bolt up at all. They were basically, the bolt just wouldn't fit in there. So I used my impact wrench and managed to break one of these off the weld. It basically became unwelded, and it just snapped off. So I still kept it though. It still works. It's just not captive onto the subframe anymore. I would have to put a wrench on it to hold it in place while I tighten the other side. So that's what I'm going to do today, and I may end up re-tapping some of these if I can't get it to go back on. Because right now I do have the subframe brace on the car, but it's not on all the way. It's loose and it flaps around, and when I hit a major bump, it does make a noise big time. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten that up first before we install a very special part. Okay, I just jacked up the rear of the car. I've got a jack stand, still have the jack there. Because this is a rear-wheel drive car, always put the chocks on the front wheels so it doesn't roll backwards or forwards. So we're going to come back to the back end of the car, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about with that brace. Okay, so here's your rear subframe, and this is that brace that I'm talking about, and it extends down the side of the car to the chassis of the frame of the car itself. You'll see that I've got the bolts in on the back here, but if you go down further here, you'll see that one isn't in all the way because I got it in about as far as I could get it. This one down here is completely missing, and I did get the ones in the front. The front of the car bolted in just fine because it's not part of that rusty subframe that I put in. And to be honest, the subframe wasn't that rusty. It was just, sitting out for so long that I guess some rust may have built up on the inside of the threads inside. But anyways, what I'm going to do now is, since I've got both ends already attached, I'm just going to try to remove this bolt and then see if I can either maybe tap into that to fix the threads or something else. But I just need to take a look and see if I can also get that one bolted in. These are the original the bolt and nut. This was originally welded on to the subframe. You see that little ring around it? That was the part that was welded to the subframe, and it just snapped off when I was using the impact gun on that. This is the original bolt. The threads look okay, but they're not perfect. There's a couple spots here, like right there, that may be keeping it from going in. So maybe I can try to fix that. If not, I do have some replacement bolts of this size I could use. They're just not the flare nut style like this. But that's going to be the last ditch effort. I'd like to use the original parts if I can. Okay, so I'm going to start off by trying to remove this bolt, and this may give me a problem just because it's kind of rusty and it's been on there for a good year. So these bolts, they're all 17 millimeter, and I'm going to use a breaker bar on this just to try to loosen this up, and hopefully it'll come right out. Great. So yeah, that thing was rusted on there so bad. What I'm gonna have to end up doing now is, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to drill it out and just put a new bolt in. I've got some replacement bolts I can use, so it's not that big a deal, but it's just gonna eat up my time trying to get that to come out. So all right.
One week later.
So this is another goodie I picked up at Harbor Freight. It's a tap and die set. Basically what I just did is I took the original bolt that was welded to the subframe, and I just retapped it with this tap here. Let's see, what size was this? This was a 12 by 1.5. And I took the original bolt and I just put it in, and it actually works. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this back on the frame, and I'm gonna have to hold it on one end with just a spanner here. And I'm still working on getting all the chunks of the old bolt that broke in half. I'm trying to get it off, and in its place I'll just put one of these new sets I picked up at a hardware store. We'll see if I can get that to work. I don't know yet, but at least I'll have this one on, so that'll be one that's secure. Alright, it took me a while, but I finally got that bolt out of the subframe. I had to re-tap it, and I put a generic bolt in there just to hold it in place. Okay, so back underneath the car, This was the original factory one that I ended up just tapping the bolt, and it went in with no problems at all, and I've got it tightened up. This side was a booger, and what I ended up doing is, I don't know if you can see through the top up through there, I retapped the original hole, and it wasn't going in, you know, exactly tight, but it was a longer bolt than the factory one, so I put the replacement bolt on top of that, so it's actually going through two bolts, the one that's welded to the subframe that I had to tap, and the new one at the top. So it's not really going anywhere. I do wish the head was a little bit larger. I may end up redoing this with a washer or something, or if I can find one of those flare nut type of bolts at the hardware store in the same size, I'll get one of those. But for now, this is just to keep this from rattling, because it was doing quite a lot of rattling every time I hit a bump. So the subframe should be, the brace anyways, should be on there good. So I just received a real JDM part for the Miata. It comes from Ken Auto of Japan, and they have partnered up with IL Motorsports to distribute this over here in the US. It is called a Dosukoi. And basically it is a brace for the rear end of the car, kind of where you mount the tow hooks on the rear of the car. This stiffens up the rear end to where it will eliminate any of the harshness and the noise and vibration that I've got from my solid differential Delrin bushings. So let's go ahead and install this, and we'll take it for a spin and see if we can tell any difference. So this is the Dosukoi. And you see it mounts 2 points on each side, and I'll show you the orientation here. It goes under the car where your baby teeth would be located. So here's your exhaust, and it's going to be these guys right here on both sides. These are 14 millimeter. When I took off the baby teeth, I put these back on just so I wouldn't lose the bolts. They're just on finger tight for now. Alright, I'm going to set the camera down so I can get that upper one up there, and we're halfway done. Okay, the Dosukoi is all installed. Let's go take her for a spin. So I just started up the car, and immediately I noticed that the vibrations are a little bit smoother. So I'm going to go ahead and start driving around and see if I can tell any other differences. So far, I really like this brace. It almost feels like a rear strut brace of some sort. It just tightens up the back end, and I don't know. It takes a little getting used to, but I actually really like it. So I'm gonna keep driving, and I'll give you my full review here in a few minutes. Okay, so I just got back from taking it for a test drive, and the first thing I've noticed is that vibrations have reduced greatly. Even just sitting still at idle, it doesn't vibrate quite as much as it did before. It just feels very smooth. The next thing that I noticed is taking turns, there's a lot less understeer, and it's just a tighter rear end. I mean, it's almost like a rear strut brace in a way, because it just tightens everything up. Everything just feels more secure. So if you've noticed that your car needs extra bracing, then this is one that I would highly recommend. It just reduces the vibrations and also reduces understeer quite a bit. So I'm gonna keep testing it, but you know, right now I'm really liking it. So let me know what you think about this. If you liked the video, let me know by hitting that like button. And if you want to see more, you're gonna have to subscribe. Sayonara.